Okay, well, hello everyone, and my name is Deanna from Deanna's World, and today I am interviewing author Emily Michel. Is that how you pronounce it?
It
Michael?
is. It is.
Right.
It got
Okay.
anglicized once upon a time.
Right. Okay. Because normally it's Michelle, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. Just a little bit about myself. I'm not sure if you know Emily. I try to be a writer. Try. I've been a blogger for a very, very long time, predominantly in romance. So Deanna's World was originally my blog. And I now work in publishing. I have my own company where I offer author services, and that's all on my website. So I still do some blogging. I do a lot of critiquing, alpha reading, beta reading, a lot of all sorts of author services. And recently TikTok, which is it's been a journey, hasn't it?
It is. It is interesting to try and wrap your head around it.
Oh gosh, I don't think I will ever be able to do that because it keeps changing. But we can get into that a bit more later because, boy, I could talk about that forever. Okay, so Emily, tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. So I am a retired military spouse. I have two teenagers, and we moved back to our home state of Arizona a few years ago to be closer to family when my husband retired. And I've been publishing since 2019. So
Cool. And what were you doing when you were a military spouse? Were you writing too, or were you doing something else?
I was trying to write. It was hard for me to be able to do creative things in the stressful environment around the military. Constant deployments and training and stuff. And with my kids were young at that point. They're teenagers now. They were little for the longest time. So it took me 7 years to write and publish my first book.
Wow. Okay.
And I was
Did
just
you
doing. Sorry, I was just
did
doing
you
mom things and volunteering.
yeah,
So
yeah, cool. And being married to someone in the military, I assume you traveled a lot or you moved around a lot with deployments and things like that too, didn't you?
we did. Let's see. Where have we started out in Texas. We moved to Germany, moved within Germany a few times, came back to the States, to Kansas, back to Texas, then to Virginia, and then he retired. So my oldest was in 4 different school districts in 4 different states before he hit high school.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot of moving around. Do you ever get used to it?
In some ways you do. We just hit 6 years in the same house, and last year I was like, oh, it's time to go through the cupboards because we're not moving to force us to go through the cupboards and get rid of things that we no longer
Yes,
need.
yes, I know what you mean. I a while ago I went through my cupboards and I found a jar of coffee from 2012.
Exactly.
Okay, so about your books. Now you said you were trying to write and it took you 7 years to finish your first book. Did you find, because you know how publishing changes so fast right now, and interests and trends and genres and all that sort of stuff changes,
Yes.
and you know, paranormal romance, which is what you write 10 years ago, is completely different from what paranormal romance is now. In terms of back when I started reading paranormal romance, it was one couple, one book, even if it was in a series. And if you only focused on one person, and there tended not to be much romance, or there might have been a little bit of romantic interest, but it tended to be urban fantasy.
Right.
Lines between urban fantasy and paranormal romance has kind of blurred.
Mm-hmm.
And in the last few years, which I do have a point, in the last few years, it's changed where, you know, I had a look at your books that you had published, and the series with Annika in it. I don't remember the name, sorry.
Okay.
But it focuses on one heroine through a series of books, which is very much urban fantasy, but you call it a paranormal romance. So I would like to hear what, you know, you talk about your books a bit, but I would like to hear at some point why you call it paranormal romance. And a lot of authors who write similar kinds of structured series like yours call it a paranormal romance, and why it's not urban fantasy anymore.
So I think there's two reasons why it really is kind of, you know, in that blurred line between paranormal and urban fantasy. I think the reason why I stuck with the paranormal romance is that there are some romance elements that get stronger as you go through the series.
Right.
So when I think of urban fantasy, I think a lot of Laurel K. Hamilton, Jim Butcher, and it does tend to have more of a one perspective, and mine is dual POV, and that's more of a romance thing than an urban fantasy,
right,
trope. Or so I kind of went on the paranormal romance side. Just you kind of have to pick.
Right.
You know, when you're setting up your books in Amazon and other distributors, and you have to pick something. So that's kind of what I went with. It seemed to fit the romance genre a slightly better than urban fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other reason I went that way was because I did join the Romance Writers of America for a while.
Right.
And so I was learning how to write romance. So I put more romance elements into the books as they, you know, went through revisions. And so I think I ended up more on the romance side than on the urban fantasy side.
Right. Okay. Now, what drew you to the genre then? You know, there are so many different genres to pick from. What made you decide, oh, you know, werewolves and witches?
Yeah.
So vampires or spiders are in right now. I don't
know. I have loved speculative fiction since I was little. Wizard of Oz and fairy tales, and you know, the Chronicles of Narnia, all those fantasy books and sci-fi books from the time I was very little. And then really got into Laurel K. Hamilton in the 90s. And before that, it was Anne McCaffrey, though that's a little more sci-fi. But
right.
So
but
it's just
dragon books are definitely very paranormal though.
right.
Anne McCaffrey. Yeah.
Yeah, some of hers are. Yeah, the Rowan series and things like that tend to be a little more paranormal. So yeah, it was just these were the stories that I was telling myself to help myself fall asleep when my husband was deployed.
Like in your own
and eventually
head?
Yeah, like, I would just tell myself these stories in my own head, and eventually I'm like, you know, I should probably try and write these down.
Right. Okay. Cool.
So yeah, in 2012 is when I started writing them down, and then I published in 2019. So it took like 6 years to kind of get it to a point where I thought it was ready for editing and and stuff. And then it took another year to go through revisions and go through the whole process of getting it published.
Right. So you have 3 books out in Annika's series.
That's right.
What's the series called?
That's the Magic and Monsters series, and the first book is Witch Hazel and Wolfsbane.
And there are 4 books, did you say, or 3 books?
There's 3 books. It's a complete trilogy. I may at some point go back and write side character stories, but I did just finish up a novelette. It's about 10,000 words, and it's one of the side characters' little prequel story. So that I just finished that up, and that's going to go out to newsletter subscribers soon. So
right. Okay, well that's cool. And you have a new fantasy series out. Oh, Blood and something.
Yes, it's my Snow White retelling, Blood, Magic, and Brandy, that came out in April. And
right.
Yeah, so it's a different take on Snow White.
Right. I love fairy tale retellings. My favorite fairy tale is Cinderella. So if you feel like it, do a Cinderella retelling. I'll read it.
Yeah, I've got elements for Cinderella retelling in the back of my brain for the youngest sister in that book. So
cool. Yeah. Okay. And so Blood and my brain. Blood,
Magic, and Brandy.
Blood, Magic, and Brandy. I should write this down. No, I'll pull up your Amazon page. That would be a lot easier. Blood, Magic, and Brandy is fantasy romance. So that's, again, different from paranormal romance, and fantasy romance is huge on Book Talk.
Yes.
So what made you decide to switch genres?
It's more of a little sidestep, because a lot of people who read paranormal will read fantasy romance, will read sci-fi romance. There's a lot of overlap, but obviously not one-to-one. Just a story idea that got in my head, and I was supposed to be working on the sequel to the first book in one of my other series, and this just kind of came in almost fully formed, and I wrote like a basic beat sheet in like 10 days and sat down and did a draft, like a 55,000 word draft in a month. It was just one of those things that just like everything clicked. It was just came together. I'm like, I have to get this story out.
Well, 50,000 words in a month. That is amazing, right? But that's also
I did that with
kind of a NaNoWriMo does that, right? 50,000 words in
a month.
Yes,
that's exactly. I was supposed to be working on the sequel to A Memory of Wings during NaNoWriMo, and 10 days before, just like I was going to bed, and this whole story just kind of popped into my head. I'm like, I have to see where this goes. And by the time, like, I gave myself 10 days, and then I was just ready to go. It was like, it's time for Nano, and I'm working on this.
Right. So that's just amazing. And I'm looking at A Memory of Wings right now. It's enemies to lovers, and I love the cover of A Memory of Wings. Do you have a copy you can show, or do you have?
Yep, I do. I was smart. I pulled some
books out. Yeah, see, that is just a gorgeous cover. I love all that fire and the guy on it, and it's just a gorgeous cover. And I love that line in your blurb that says, "Wrong demon, my friend."
Yeah, okay. Shax is very much the snarky one. So.
And is it just just one couple, or is it reverse harem, or?
It's one couple. So I just finished up the a round of revisions on the sequel to it. So it's going to be a duology. So there's a book and a sequel, and then it's done. So this
Right.
one is told, the first one's told a little bit more from Shax's perspective, the man's perspective.
Right.
And then book 2 is told a little bit more from the angel's perspective.
But do you mix the point of views in both books, though?
I do.
So you kind of alternate chapters and that kind of thing. Yeah, that's cool. I do love the guy's point of view. I always want to know what's going on in his head.
I do too.
I read a book recently where it was a really good book, but the entire book was only in her point of view. Mm-hmm. And I understand why the author did that. But man, I really wanted to know what the guys were thinking.
I'm the same way. It's why I write dual POVs, because I want to know what's going on in their head. When I did the Magic and Monsters, the Annika's story, that was originally written in first person. I'm like, something's just not working. And I realized it was because I was missing his point of view.
Right.
Like, yeah. And then I had to rewrite it into third person and dual point of view. So that was fun. But
I had an author friend of mine, an author friend client, and she was writing for a publisher, and I can't remember which way it went, but she had written the entire book and she had submitted it, and then she had to rewrite the entire book, either from third to first or first to third. And she said that was a real bugger to do. Like, because you have to find, like, every instance of the point of view and change it.
Yeah, it was rough. We were still doing it like 2 rounds of, after I'd gone through and revised it and done my own self-editing and had beta readers do it. I think it was still finding things through 2 rounds of paid editing. So
yeah. I'm just turning off the sound on my computer so it doesn't ding at me while I'm doing this. Okay. So if someone was new to your books, what would you recommend they start with?
If they want a complete series, the Witch Hazel and Wolfsbane, the Magic and Monsters series is, of course, the way to start, because I haven't completed anything else. But I think that A Memory of Wings was probably stronger writing. I mean, it was my 5th book, that I wrote. So my writing had improved, because it does with time and practice. So.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that one's a little bit more on trend right now, because it's a little darker, a little spicier.
Okay, so on a spice scale, because I know people like to know this.
Yeah.
I see on Book Talk, and it's more smut talk than book talk, really. It's just, they really like their spice. On a scale of 1 to 5 chilies, what would let's start with Magic and Monsters. What would Magic and Monsters be on a chili scale?
That's probably a 2, 2.5.
Right.
So it gets a little bit spicier. Like the 3rd book is much spicier than the first 2, just because of the nature of how the series progresses. But that's at most a 3.
Okay. So do you have shenanigans going on the first book?
Yes, there are shenanigans in the first book, but it's a slow burn. So it's very much towards the end.
Right.
And, much more euphemistic language than.
Okay. As opposed to the eggplant thrusting.
Right. Yes.
That poor eggplant.
I know.
It woke up one day and went, "What? I'm a what?"
I'm a what now?
Oh dear. Okay, and so a memory of wings you say is a little bit spicier. So 3 chilies, 4 chilies.
I would say that one again because it's a slow burn. It's probably 2.5 to 3. You know, and of course some of it's subjective. What I would call a 3 might be a 2 to someone else, just
Right.
because.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I would say a 3 at most, just because it happens later. The sequel's probably going to be a 3.5 to 4, depending on exactly
Right.
how it
So
all
again,
falls out.
there are shenanigans, but towards the end of the book.
Right.
Right. Okay. And so maybe I'm saving the best for last, but Blood Magic and Brandy, that's your spiciest book?
No, that one's actually probably the least spicy. Maybe.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow. Okay.
it just felt right for this story. Like, I was sitting there, I was trying to, I was writing it. I'm like, no, this needs, because they're younger. The two main characters are like in their early 20s. So it didn't feel quite right to throw them into something super spicy.
Oh, well, you did not know me in my 20s. Oh, dear. Boy, did I get, well, with my husband. But boy, there were some fun times.
But it just, I don't know. It just, I think I was also afraid that people might think it was a YA.
Right.
And so
okay.
I didn't, if I did pick anybody up, I didn't want to like scandalize anyone too much. So this is probably my least spicy, but there's 2 on page spicy scenes. So
Right. Okay. And were they like in the middle of the book or towards the end of the book or
middle?
in the middle?
Yeah.
Okay.
In the middle. Hi. We have a visitor.
Oh, hello. What's her name? His name?
This is Edgar.
Hello, Edgar.
He almost always comes up and says hi whenever I'm on any sort of camera.
Right. Okay. Okay. So, now you said you published your first book in 2019.
That's correct.
Did you traditionally publish or did you self-publish?
I self-published that one. So I had it done, I had it ready to go, and I knew if I went through the querying process, but I can't say that, I would lose, like, it would just break my heart, I wasn't in the mood for rejection, so I'm like, I'll put this up. I'll do this myself and see how it goes, because if it doesn't go well, I can always change my mind later. So
yeah. Okay. And how have you found that experience? Because you mentioned something about having having experienced a small publisher going out to business. So how does that relate to self-publishing?
So I did want to try something more traditional. And they have on Twitter, they have like pitching events where you have a one-line pitch that you go on Twitter, you do an appropriate hashtag, and agents, editors, and small publishers will sometimes be interested, and they'll ask to see more. So I'm like, I have this.
Sorry, I'm just going to backtrack a little bit. On Twitter, so you just tweet a pitch, or is there a hashtag?
Yeah. You do. This one was Pit Dark, I think, because it was for darker manuscripts. So murder, mayhem, darker.
So a publisher or an agent would just search the hashtag?
They would search the hashtag, and then if they liked the pitch and wanted to see more, I think they like it or they comment. And and then you would follow whatever their rules were for submitting for that event. So
Right.
in this
Okay.
particular instance, it was, submit um, submit your first chapter and a synopsis, something like that. So
Okay. Wow. Really
so
interesting.
yeah,
So you pitched and you got selected?
I pitched. I had a small publisher that was very interested. I went through, whatever their submission process was for this event, and then they wanted to see more. So I sent them more, and they're like, yeah, this fits in our brand. We really like your writing style. We like that this is a little bit different. And so I signed a contract and had them a manuscript. I think it was in February of 2021 is when the manuscript was due.
Okay.
So they gave me like 2 or 3 months to kind of polish it up and stuff. And things were going. It was scheduled for early August of 2021, and we had done edits, we had done the proofs, we had done the final kind of proofread with it formatted and everything. And then 5 days before it was scheduled to be published, they called and said, yeah, we can't be doing this anymore. They had a whole bunch of stuff going on in their family life that just made balancing running a publishing house and running their family, it was impossible. And you can't let your family down. So yeah, they pulled the book 5 days before publishing.
Wow. I mean, obviously, it wouldn't have just been you. There would have been other authors affected as well.
They had about one book published a month. They had about 12 authors in the publishing house.
Right.
But they published the one in July, but then they didn't get to mine. They're like, nope, we're done. We can't, like, the math didn't work and the time didn't work. So
did
I
you
wish
get the
they.
book back?
I'm sorry?
Did you get the book?
Yes.
So
Yes.
have you published it on your own now?
That would be A Memory of Wings.
Right.
That's
Okay.
fun. So they were really good. Once they'd made the decision, they were really good at getting me my rights back right away. Amazon was having some issues because it had technically been published because
Right.
the 5 days wasn't quite enough time. So they helped not negotiate, but they contacted Amazon when Amazon's like, no, you can't publish this. It's not yours. I'm like, yes, it is. So
yeah, I
so
see
they
that happen a lot with authors who get their rights back, and sometimes it can be a bit of a battle to say, hey, I got my rights back. I am allowed to, and all that sort of stuff. So now, tell me, being in publishing and working with a lot of authors and being connected to a lot of authors, not so much on TikTok, probably more on, Facebook, because that's more of where the authors I work with are on in terms of social media. I see a lot of posts where people run into glitches, or things happen with Amazon that make them very frustrated. For recently, a charity anthology got cancelled.
I saw that.
I think like a couple of days before it was released, and they lost thousands of pre-orders and things like that. I mean, Amazon is the biggest publisher there is.
Right.
It accounts for 60 to 80% of ebook sales. In terms of a platform. I don't know about other books and things like that, but the number's pretty high. what is your experience publishing? Because I'm looking at your books and you're in Kindle Unlimited. So I assume that means you're exclusive to Amazon.
To the Magic and Monster series is wide. So it's
Right.
just A
Okay.
Memory of Wings and the
Mhm.
Blood Magic Brandy books that are in KU. Um, Overall, it's been okay.
Mhm.
You know, I don't want to put all of my eggs in one basket. I want to be able to reach a broader audience.
Right.
And so my basic plan is to put new releases into KU for a year or a series until a year after the last book comes out,
Yeah.
or until sales, page reads drop off, and then go wide
Wide.
to try
Right.
and balance it as best as possible.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, yeah, this is my marketing year. Like, I need, the books are good. I need to crack the marketing part of it. And so this is my year to try things out with marketing and, seeing what works best for my books.
Right.
And
And
so
hence
it's just an ongoing experience.
right. And that's why we're all on TikTok, because it's the
Right.
latest greatest marketing apparently.
Mhm.
So uh, let's talk about TikTok. Yeah.
Sure.
Um, uh, what kind of videos are you doing on TikTok, and um, what have you found works for you?
um, I'm still trying to figure out what's working. I kind of throw a bunch of different stuff out there to try and see what might work. I do tend to limit myself mostly to book content. So um, I do a post every night that I call Drink Up Fishes, and it's just kind of like, sometimes it's an accountability post, like, this is what I worked on today. I try and share something that brought me joy for the day, or something I'm struggling with sometimes, if it was a
Mhm.
rough day. So it's a way of just connecting with, people, my friends and followers on TikTok in general. And then in the morning and afternoon, I tend to do book related content. So book reviews, I'll talk about my books. I might give a little bit of, a writing tip or something like that.
Okay. And what have you found works for you? I mean, obviously we met in a TikTok group, and a lot of people post in those groups talking about what works for them and
Mhm.
repeating similar videos to kind of catch that trend or that wave, and to keep that going. So do you have any like particular videos that work for you?
Um,
Like, something that's
I
kind of
my
gone viral,
my views
like,
seem to be yeah, my views seem to be pretty consistent across all of the videos that I do. It'll just be like a random one that'll pop.
right.
Probably my best video to date was when I accidentally walked into a Christian bookstore, not expecting it to be a Christian bookstore. So
Okay.
I did a funny story about, well, here I am writing smutty books, walking into a Christian bookstore. And that one did really well, but that was last summer. So, and
Right.
then a few of them have just popped, but it's been kind of random.
Have you tried repeating the ones that have popped? Like, can you think of one which has popped? A lot of people sort of say, "Oh, page flips do very well for me, so I only do page flips," and or this song does really well for me, so I only use this song, in my videos, or that kind of thing.
Nope. Everything seems to be like, I'll try using a trending sound, with a page flip. I get the same number of views as sitting here talking on TikTok showing off my book. So for me, for my account, it's pretty consistent, except sometimes I'll have one randomly pop and sometimes I'll have one randomly do very, very poorly.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem to be like a particular reason why that one should do poorly, except every once in a while I'll catch myself. It'll be because I use a forbidden word, you know. I'll be like, oops, I forgot to catch that, you know, unalive instead of, you know.
Have you ever like gotten dinged for one of those forbidden words, or I found that your video has not performed and then realized you've done something that TikTok doesn't like?
Yeah, I've never gotten a community guidelines violation because of it, but it'll be suppressed. It'll have, 20 views after 24 hours instead of 250. So
Right. Yeah.
I'm like, okay. And I go back, and when those happen, I go back and look, and I'm like, sometimes it's like, I have no idea why this one didn't do well. Like there's no reason why it should have done so poorly. And then sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I forgot to say I'm alive instead, or it got a little bit too racy.
Yeah, it's so hard. I find it very hard with TikTok in terms of content because, obviously, I I work in the romance space, so everything's kind of on a scale of spicy to, like,
Yeah.
and it's so hard. It really is. All the good stuff, you like, um. I have a client who's a crime thriller writer, and he when you do a crime thriller, somebody gets knocked off and somebody gets
Right.
kidnapped, and there's a theft, and there's like somebody getting taken care of because they're a loose end, and you know um and he's trying to find quotes and hooky quotes that would work, and we're going through what he can and can't use, um and what words to use in his videos, and he'll send me his content to say, what do you think, and can I do that, and he's like, and I'm like, can't do that, can't do that, can't use that word, can't use that word. And he'd be like, well, what the F can I say?
Yep. Yeah, it can be hard. It's like, oh, this is a great one, except I can't use this because I have to use unalive and
Unalive. Man, I hate that word.
I know.
It's just a terrible word. But like, I'll tell you a funny story. I was making a book trailer for a client. It's not on TikTok. This is for an ad and for Facebook and a few other, and I think Instagram. Um, and anyway, so we're putting the video together, and we have all these scenes, and the book cover. We're talking about what to put in the scene for the hero and the book cover, and she goes, well, you can do this and do that, and I can use him, he's gorgeous, and I'm like, no, okay, we can't use the book cover because he's naked. And he was like, okay. And then she shows me another picture, and I'm like, oh, we can't use that picture because we can see his nipple. We don't like the nipple. And then she was like, what about this picture? You don't see any of that. No, you can't. His hand is wrapped around her throat, and it looks like he's choking her. And it was just the most, like, it felt so surreal having that conversation with a client while we were working on what to do with her video in a way that would be interesting and that we could, promote the book and show that it's sexy and fun and all those things, and not get the video taken down or not get dinged for saying like a particular word or things like that. I mean, I was working on a video with another client a couple of days ago, and she wanted to say something with the unalive word and the word, I think, deadly or something like that. And I was like, no, you can't do that. So we ended up with luring danger into their lives.
Yeah.
And that was the best we could do to try to convey what we were trying to say without, going stabby,
Yeah, it's really interesting, and each platform has different levels of tolerances for different things. And so, like, something you can get away with on TikTok, you may not be able to get away with on Facebook. And
I have found that TikTok is the worst. So if you can get away with it on TikTok, you can get away with it everywhere. So TikTok is kind of like my lowest common denominator. If you can't do, if you can use it on TikTok, you can probably use it in an Amazon ad or a Facebook ad or on Facebook and Instagram or stories or whatever it is. So that's kind of how I work, because I do the stuff for a lot of clients.
Right.
A lot of videos for a lot of clients. So at the back of my mind, most of the stuff I do is for Instagram and Facebook, but at the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, will it work on TikTok, and can you use it on an ad? Because like I've got a new client recently, and what she wants me to do for her is a video for TikTok that she's using in an ad. And so it's kind of like, well, if you can use it on TikTok for an ad, it probably means you can use it for Amazon or, Facebook or whatever it is. So, but yeah. So what would your top 3 tips for TikTok success be? Like, I'm new to TikTok. What do I do? I mean, you got to 1,500 or however many. You've got over 1,000 followers, and that's kind of like the magic number. And I like to think that by the time you get over 1,000 followers, bots or no bots, you've worked hard to get that many. So do you have any tips?
So I would say make sure, especially if they're brand new, make sure you've changed your profile picture either to a nice picture of yourself or your logo. You've set up your bio so it's really obvious you're not a bot.
Yeah, you're not a bot. Yeah.
Put up a simple video again so people know you're not a bot. Introduce yourself somehow. And then work more first on curating your FYP than curating your content that you're putting out there, because it will help so make sure that you're doing, you're following book accounts, you're following author accounts, you're following library accounts and bookstore accounts. And then that way more of that stuff will come on your FYP and you can see what other people are doing, and then try and emulate that as much as, put your own spin on it, but then emulate what other people are doing, what seems to be popular, or just something that you like, because if you're not having fun with it, what's the point?
That's true. I have days when I hate TikTok or I'm just exhausted by TikTok.
Yeah.
And when that's happened, at one point, what I did was I just went, I'm just going to set up another account. It's going to be a personal account. It's got nothing to do with books or book talk or work or anything like that. And I'm just going to have fun. And then what I did was I go and I listen to music. I watch comedy. Mm-hmm. There was this really weird video of like some kind of a cleaning or housekeeping channel, and a woman reacted to it. And it's hilarious because they had like this fridge drawer full of like scorpions and bugs and turtles.
Oof.
And she's cooking the turtles, and the lady who's done the duet with her goes, "What about the turtles? What are you doing with the turtles?" And it's like a 3-minute video, and at the end of the video, because the turtle thing was like in the first 30 seconds, at the end of the video after 3 minutes, she goes, "That's it? What about the turtles?" And it's hilarious. And I found that when I do that, it's given me like the fun back into TikTok.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not worrying about the algorithm because God love us, I hate that algorithm. But man, that algorithm, sometimes it can control your life.
Yes.
And trying to figure it out. Wow. So yeah, I think it's important to try to get on the fun side of TikTok. I mean, for me,
Yeah.
So you don't burn out. Somebody commented and just said, "I couldn't finish the turtle video." It was a really weird video. I'm gonna have to share that video with you. I'll find it and I'll share it with you because it's like it's actually an author who duetted it.
Okay.
So it showed up in my book talk because because it was an author who posted it. So yeah, I will share that with you. Okay, so we'll wrap up soon because we're almost at an hour. Are you on any other social media besides TikTok? Do you want to tell us where you are and how we can find you? Have a website?
I do. I have all of the above. That's one of the few things I think I did right. Is about 6 months before I published, I set up a website and got on all the social media. So I am at, actually you can probably see it up there, Emmy My Writer. That's my handle across Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do a lot except on TikTok and Facebook. Everything else, I have a presence. I try and do something every once in a while, but I'm not there a lot. But if that's your favorite platform, you can find me there. So
right. And
then
is the website Emmy My Writer as well, or is that Emily Michel? Michael. Sorry. Oops.
Yeah, it's emilymichaelauthor.com.
Okay.
And then on that, you have links to all of my books. There's the newsletter sign up, and some freebies as well. So a few sample chapters and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the things I would say to anyone today who's new is to make sure that you have a link tree, because then you list all your socials and links and websites and things like that, and it makes it so easy to find you. Because it's just, I recently updated my business cards, and instead of putting just my website, I actually put my link tree address on there instead.
Yeah.
And yeah, because that makes such a difference.
Yeah, I have a link tree, and then I also have a page on my website that's just all the links. So
yeah.
So either way works.
Okay. And do you have a newsletter?
I do. It goes out usually monthly. I just sent one out this past week. But there will be a special edition coming up in about a week and a half where I'm going to send out the novelette I just finished up to all of my subscribers.
Right.
And that's on my website. If they go to my website, there's probably a pop-up, and if that doesn't work, you can click on the newsletter tab.
Right. And so joining your newsletter would get them the novelette.
Yes, that is correct.
That would be like, I assume, a book funnel link or something like that.
Story origin, but yeah, same concept.
Similar. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So anyway, if you're watching, go sign up for Emily's newsletter. You get a freebie in your inbox pretty soon. So there you go. Now, how about some fun questions? Read the book or watch the movie?
That depends. If it's not a genre I read, I'll just watch the movie. So like I don't do a lot of thrillers, but I do watch movie thrillers. I don't read thrillers. So if it's based on a book, I'm just gonna watch the movie.
Right.
But everything else, probably the book.
Have you ever like read a book and watched the movie and either preferred the book or preferred the movie?
This is going to get me into trouble with fantasy readers, but Lord of the Rings, I would much rather watch the movie.
Me
The
too.
book,
Oh yes.
the books are fine, and I acknowledge that they're like the foundation of modern fantasy. But oh my goodness, just get on with the story already.
Yes, I'm with you on that one. I tried reading Lord of the Rings. I love The Hobbit because I read that in school. But as I got a bit older, I tried to read Lord of the Rings, and I couldn't get through it. I could not get through it, but I love the movies.
Yes.
I have watched the extended version of the movies so
We
many.
have those too.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I actually saw someone post the other day. Have you heard of the Suki Stackhouse series?
Yep.
And they made the TV series True Blood.
Yes.
I read the books first when they first came out. So I have been reading that series from the beginning. And I love that series. It's fun, it's quirky, it's spicy, it's just all the things. And then they made the TV series True Blood, and I was like, oh, really excited. Watched the first episode and went, what the heck is that? It was dark, it was gritty, it was kind of deviant, and it was nothing like the books at all.
Yeah, I would agree.
And I couldn't watch the TV show. If I had not read the books, maybe I could have watched the TV show, but as it were, the TV show was just no, it just wasn't. That was one instance where it just didn't work for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think I watched the first 2 or 3 seasons of it, and then I noped out. I'm like, I can't. Like,
you did a lot better. You did a lot better than me. I made it through. I think I did 2 episodes, and that was as far as I could go. Another one, Hunger Games. I made it through the first book and half of the second book, and I couldn't do it anymore. But I watched all the movies.
Okay. I listened to those books, so I got them on audiobook.
Right.
And I think if I had to read them, it would have been a different story. I really liked the narration. So I went through those. I think with those, I liked them about the same.
I found the books. I found the books very depressing. I did, especially. I found the books very, very. I don't want to use the word dark because dark is very different these days when people say dark, but yeah. I found it very depressing, and I didn't like that whole post-apocalyptic fight for survival, last man standing kind of world, plus the trauma that all those kids went through for having to do what they did. That was hard for me.
Yeah. I liked when I learned that it was kind of an allegory for how the media was presenting, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. It clicked for me. I was
Oh,
like, oh,
I didn't know that.
yeah. So that's kind of what she did, is like when she wrote these, reality TV was a big deal.
Hmm.
And on the news every night were, pictures from Iraq and Afghanistan, movies, video from Iraq and Afghanistan. And she's like, what if I combine this? And so when I found that out, I'm like, okay, that makes sense to me. And I think maybe having that there
Right.
in the back of my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. I just love the cinematography and the action and the
Yeah.
costumes. I thought they were all fantastic. From the movies, and I got very drawn into the movies. And even then, I watched it with my husband, and he did say, "Wow, this is kind of dark and confronting." You know,
Yeah.
and that whole thing with President Snow, and yeah. Okay, favorite genre of movies to
I
watch.
like I like comic book movies. I like the Marvel movies. Give me some action adventure with a few quips on the side, and I am a happy camper.
So, have you watched The Lost City?
No, no, but it's on my to-do list for the summer. So,
It's so funny. It's so
yeah.
funny, and you have to watch Brad Pitt in his cameo for the movie. He is just hilarious. He's portrayed as that typical ex-military hero in a romance novel kind of.
Okay.
Um, it's but it's funny. It's kind of like they take it seriously, but they're making fun of it. And then if you know the genre, you kind of like get it. Um,
Yeah.
and it's just hilarious. Um, okay, one unpopular opinion that you have.
Besides the Lord of the Rings thing.
Yes, like I get the Lord of the Rings thing. You might not be that alone out there on that one.
Yeah. Goodness. I don't know. I always hate to share unpopular opinions because sometimes they're unpopular because I'm wrong. you know? Um, like specifically about books or just any unpopular opinion.
Anything like
Um, I would say like we need to make sure our kids fail, which it sounds weird, but they need to fail so that they know how to come back from that. And that's one of the hardest things about being a parent is stepping back and letting your kids make a big mistake so that they can learn to figure out how to solve the problem they created.
I get that. I get that. Because my parents were very protective when I was growing up, and I remember my parents saying to me very clearly, quite frequently, "We've made all those mistakes, so you don't have to make them." And and a part of me kind of rebelled because it felt controlling in one sense. But at the same time, a part of me thought, but if I don't make a mistake, how do I learn? I know,
Yeah.
I know. You say learn from other people's mistakes, which is a good thing to do, and it's a smart thing to do. But I think every now and then, in certain circumstances, you kind of have to experience it yourself to actually really own that lesson. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So I actually agree with you. I mean, not horrible things, mind you.
No, nothing like dangerous, but like,
Yeah.
my oldest failed his last math class. I did everything I knew how to do to encourage, reaching out. And this was 2020, 2021. And he was just done. He had checked out. I'm like, well, then we'll figure out a way to fix it later. So, and we did. So,
Yeah. And sometimes you have to get that realization where, wow, if I fail at this, these are the consequences. And you don't actually realize the consequences until you actually experience that failure yourself.
mm-hmm. Absolutely. So yeah, it was a good lesson for all of us. But yeah, I think we need to allow more room for failure because it's going to
Okay.
happen anyway.
Okay. So now, do you dare give me an unpopular book opinion?
Oh goodness. Unpopular book opinion. Too much spice just doesn't work for me. Like I do like a certain amount of spice, but a lot of the books that are really popular, I'm like, oh, it's just too much. I don't know if that's an opinion, but it just doesn't work for me. I'm perfectly fine with everybody else enjoying them.
I'm kind of like, if you give me one scene, I'm happy. If you give me one scene in the middle of the book and one scene at the end of the book, I'm ecstatic. That's good enough for me. I just need to see a little bit of spice. But I see where you're coming from, because there are some books where it's like, my husband reads some romance every now and then. I've got him into it, and there are a couple of authors that he quite likes. And he saw an ad for a taboo teacher-student romance.
Okay.
That he thought sounded interesting, so he grabbed it and read it. We share a KU account, and he's used to reading romances by fairly mainstream authors who generally, around about 50% of the book, you get a spicy scene.
Right.
People like Jane Ann Krantz, who also writes as Amanda Quick. Who else has he read? Like Anna Hackett. The mainstream romance authors.
Right.
So he's got it in his head that, in a romance, you get something spicy at 50%. So he picks up this taboo teacher-student romance. And I think the heroine, who's the student, is like 18 years old. So, that's kind of like your minimal legal age to
right.
Get all sexy. And he goes, whoa, 10%. and then he was like, okay, like every other chapter. He's kind of like, wow, this is different.
Yeah. And and I do read them from time to time, especially if they're particularly popular, but I'm like, I read maybe a few a year just to kind of like touch base and see if I'm still at that same level, or and I'm like, okay, I'm glad I read that. I'm not going to read another super spicy one for a while. So.
It kind of feels like too much of a good thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I like it every now and then, and I do every now and then like a lot of it if I'm in the right mood for it. But I like the feeling more. How they feel for each other, and the longing, and the and the desire, stuff like that.
Yeah, that emotional underlying.
Okay, now, do you have anything else you'd like to add before we finish up? Because it's a little after 12, and we probably shouldn't go for too much longer, because it's starting to get a little late for you too, isn't it?
It's about 7, so it's not horribly late.
Not too bad.
So, nothing really that I can think of. It's been a delight talking with you.
Yeah, it's been really fun. I've really, really enjoyed it. Okay, one last question. what
Sure.
are you currently reading, and would you recommend it?
I am currently reading, it's called A Study in Steam. It's a steampunk novel from the June TBR takeover, TikTok TBR takeover, run by Nicola Omaran. It's pretty good. I'm enjoying it. It's I don't read a lot of steampunk. Maybe one book a year, and this is kind of fun. So
Um, okay, I just did a quick Google, and the only thing I found is A Study in Steam by Stephanie K. Clemens. Is that it?
I think so. I'm trying to find. I'm trying to find. I have it on my Kindle, and I can't.
It's
Oh, it's off.
a lady holding a sword with in a blue dress.
Yep, that would be it.
Yeah, cool. I haven't read much steampunk. The one steampunk I've read is by an author called Beck McMasters,
Okay.
and he's got a London steampunk series, and she's quite popular. But but also her books have been out a long time. Like her steampunk series was back in the very early days of steampunk. Like she was the early steampunk authors, along with someone irons. I don't remember the name. This was years ago.
Yeah. Like I said, I pick up maybe one of these a year. So just every once in a while, I'll pick something up. I'll be like, oh, that sounds interesting. And I read it and,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's Beck McMaster's London steampunk series. And I can't for the life of me remember the other very, very, very famous steampunk author. No. Whatever. Okay, look, thank you so much for hopping on with me today.
Well, thank you for having me.
I really enjoyed it. Now, everyone, make sure you go ahead and follow Emily. You can follow me too. I like that. You can find Emily on emilymichaelauthor.com. And I'll post the replay on my YouTube channel, so you can find it there too. And yeah, we'll have to do this again another time, like maybe when you have your next book out or something, and we can chat about that.
That would be fantastic.
Cool. Yeah, just send me a message when you do that, and we'll set something up. It'll be
Sounds
fun.
fantastic.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Have a good one.